Have you ever wanted your own TV show? Have you dreamed of showcasing your talent for the world to see? Well, now you can. Have your own TV show. You can have your own 30-minute show. Not only will you be seen in the Detroit area, but you can be viewed worldwide. Be seen on WHPR Detroit Live, Comcast Cable Channel 91, on the web at TV33WHPR.com, with the TV33 app, on Roku, Google TV, Apple TV, and on Amazon Fire TV. Act now. Time slots are limited. Sign up today and get a free replay with the purchase of your time slot. For more information, call 313-868-6612. Visit our studios and receive a free TV interview to promote your business, church, or organization by appointment only.
I pledge to stay drug-free.
I plan to stay drug-free.
I pledge to stay drug-free.
I pledge to be drug-free.
I pledge to stay drug-free.
And good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Expose Under the Sun, sponsored by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin, and be ready to hear a great dialogue with my special guest. Her name is Miss Carol Lee. But before we get started, the show is live. Our calling numbers are area code 313-868-0342, 313-868-0351, or 313-868-4336. Our website is www.tv33whpr.com, and you are watching us live from the awesome city of Highland Park, Michigan, under the auspices of the Honorable Mayor Hubert Yap, as well as the awesome city of Detroit, Michigan, under the auspices of the Honorable Mayor Michael Duggan. Before we get started, just wanted to give a couple of shout outs, just to let everyone know that some of you are commenting on Facebook that you've gotten the first vaccination, you've gotten the second vaccination. So, I just want to say that I know I got my second vaccination last week, or week before last rather. And I am doing well. The only issue that I had, and I'm not trying to encourage anybody to get either of the three now vaccinations that have been ADA approved. So that's not the concern that I have, because some people are waiting and they want to go and wait to see which vaccination that they can get. The suggestion, I'm like Fauci, Dr. Fauci, whichever vaccination that you are presented with first, to get it. Don't worry about the efficacy rate, because a lot of people are saying, well, there's one that's doesn't have the same efficacy rate that the other two have. That's not the concern. Some immunization is better than none. So again, I encourage everyone, if you can get any one of the three, take whichever one is presented to you first. But the thing right now is that, I've got mine. I feel a little secure, but I'm not invincible. And I feel like if I go out, I'm still wearing my mask. I'm still observing the social distancing. There's been a lot of things that our governor, Whitmer, has released the protocols now, and she's pretty much like looked at some of the mandates on some of the public places that people can congregate at and go out and recreate, as well. And, some of those things that she had suggested before, now they've been alleviated. So the thing is, right now, you have time to be able to go and read some of the different things that the governor is saying as to making certain that you don't go and you don't contract the virus, you don't spread the virus. But again, as I keep saying over and over again, I am making certain that I keep my mask on, I'm observing the social distancing, and I'm not going to do anything that could help to spread the virus. So again, I encourage everyone, be safe. Make sure that you do your research. Whichever the case, whichever vaccination that you are presented with first, it still gives you some immunity to the virus. So again, be smart, be wise, and do your research. And again, I'll tell everybody the only effects that I've had as a result of getting the vaccination was that where they administered the vaccination at, my arm was a little bit sore, but other than that, that wore off within a day or so. So people talk about you may get nauseated, or you might, get a headache or get feverish or something like that. Everything was fine. And I think, if you can get whichever one of the three that might be presented, please go about and get it. But also, too, school has started back for some young people. So if you can, I know some are still a little bit hesitant about going back to school. Just make a conscious decision, as to whether or not, if you choose to send your child back to school, that's your prerogative. And I know that there are people that are concerned about having their children back in school, thinking it might be a little too soon. So you make that decision, as to what you think is in the best interest of you, your child, and for his or her classmates. So again, those that have gone back to school, I definitely will go and hope that everything goes well. Those that are still remaining to stay home, I pray that those go, well as well. So, again, springtime is coming up. A lot of people are going to be wanting to go out. So use common judgment. Use a lot of research to make sure you're not doing anything that could put you in any violation of your health and someone else's health, at the same time. So those are things to really be really conscious about, as well. So be safe, be careful, and make certain above anything else that you use good common judgment with whatever it is that you decide that you're going to do. But now, I just want to say that, I've got a young lady that's going to be my guest on the show today. Her name is Carol Lee, and she is going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk about bridging the generation gap between individuals. And Carol, I want to thank you for coming on the show with me today.
I'm blessed to be here. I feel blessed because that's something that we need to talk about. Building the bridge with our young folks today.
What do you think, Carol, are some of the issues the differences between the generation, and I can't remember all of the different names. You've got like the millennials, the Generation X's, and, but, there's differences in some of the terminology, some of the vernacular that young people use compared to what, some of the, their fathers, their grandparents, mothers use as well. So what do you see as some of the biggest differences between the generation when you were growing up compared to now?
Some of the differences I see is that, well, you got social media out here with a lot of misinformation. But I'm a baby boomer, and a baby boomer is someone that's born between 1946 and 64. I think that I was pretty fortunate the way I was raised. My mother raised us what some folks say old school way. You got a whooping, the neighbors could whip you. that doesn't happen with this generation after me.
Well, there's so
other-
much difference now between then and now, especially when it comes down to discipline, because then you'd go out and get you a switch. Some kids even had to go out and get the switch,
I did.
for their parents to go and bring the switch in to the house for them to use on them. And, my mother used to say, I'm going to tan your rear end, and in some cases it was so funny because we would take the switch. We'd try and get the smallest switch that we could get, the weakest switch that, if it tapped you, it was going to break or, disintegrate or whatever. But, it used to tickle me because my mother would go and like take all the leaves off the switch, and she'd make sure that switch, she would just test it a couple of times, to see just how effective it was going to be.
Absolutely.
But, the thing is, belts, we got whoopings, or whoopings then. But do you think then that now, because, you have people that if you do get a spanking or you do get a whooping, that there are people out here that will go and say there was some sort of abuse that was administered on that child. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that people thought that because I saw that with my children. I spanked them. I didn't beat them, but at that time, the government made it where if you feel like you was abused, the child could call the authorities.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen in my generation. And I think too that some parents think that just a stare could stop their kids from doing stuff. I mean, I'm sure you've been in the store and you see kids fall out. That never happened in my generation. So I just think that that's one of the differences. I think that parents were more at home in my generation. Now parents have to work, both parents. Well, you do have some instances where, the father may stay home and watch the children because childcare is expensive now. Or you may have the mother stay at home, but very rarely you have that anymore. I remember years back when a child was left home and took a gun to school. I think this happened up in Pontiac or somewhere, and the mother had to work. I mean, she had to catch like 3 buses to work. So I think that's one of the differences. And I think too, media has a lot to play with it. The music was so much different when I was growing up. I mean, I grew up on classic Motown. I grew up on the funk. Mm-hmm. And I just think those are some of the challenges. But also I think that on the flip side of that some of those things can be used to bridge the gap. I mean, in my home, I played all types of music, mainly the music from my era, and my daughters even today love listening to that old school music. And then
do we ever get tired of the old school? Because when
Not
you
me.
think about like the Temptations, the Spinners, the Whispers, the Supremes, we had a lot of artists that used to perform, and for me, I could sing along with the lyrics that they, said. Whereas now you have lyrics that are like X-rated, extra X-rated, so, and then you have people being called out of their name in some cases, words that I would get my mouth washed out in soap that, are used nowadays in some of the songs that people sing. And, and it's really a different type of person. Because, I mean, it's like when I was growing up, we might have a little pause in a song that might have had a word that was an expletive, word that you couldn't say. And some stations would play it with the word intact. Others would bleep it out. But now you hardly hear any bleeps. And the same thing when it comes down to TV, and even in movies now, you see a lot of those words used in the vernacular that people are using now. And it's not even that you worry about the ages, that are hearing these words. Movies now are G-rated, R-rated, X-rated, some, even in some of the cartoons, have some words that to me, I might have got my mouth washed out in soap or got that switch that, I got
Talked
my
about.
rear end tanned, earlier. But so what do you think we need to do, Carol, to bridge the gap outside of communication? What else do we need to do? I mean, the administering the punishment for things that young people do, that's one thing, but what else do we need to do?
I think we need to educate people, take them back. They should have a program. I mean, I would love to see a program that allows young folks to go back in time. And I know we have museums and things like that. One good thing that I'm beginning to see, which I love, is that they're making movies about African American historical people. I mean, just recently they made a movie about it was called A Day in Miami, and it was about an imaginary day, hypothetical day that
Sam Cooke and Muhammad Ali,
Ali,
right,
and one of my heroes, Malcolm X.
And then Jim Brown was also in it. That was one of it was four
Yeah, it
people
was
that
Jim
was
Brown,
the date.
yeah.
Okay.
They were actually friends in real life, but this day never happened. It's just Regina King, as brilliant as she is, put this movie together, and it showed their differences. I mean, people probably didn't even know they were friends, and then it also showed the different, opinions they had, and that they didn't always agree on things. But one thing they did have in common is that they pretty much was first. Well, they were people that stood up for black people, and I loved it. So yeah, I think education. I think we need to spend more money. Now I'm not knocking Medea. I know I'm probably gonna get some calls on that. But I absolutely love Tyler Perry. He is probably one of the people that inspire me because of his giving heart. He helps a lot of people secretly. He doesn't do it. He do it privately.
He does a lot of philanthropic things for the
Yeah,
community. Okay.
absolutely. And so I would love to see him take some of those dollars and his resources and use them to make more movies about people that you would have never known about, that in the arts, just people that I think would make an impact on young folk. Because unfortunately, slavery is a big part of our culture, but that's not the whole story.
Well, I think that there's a lot of figures now from our historical, context that there are movies being made of, now. Just like here, we've got the movie made about Billie Holiday. We've got the movie, as you were saying, A Day in Miami, talking about those historical, persons.
Recently, Ma Rainey.
Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, So, you've got a lot of people that they're depicting, on the screen. And I think that there's baseball, there's also people in the political field, there are people that are actors and actresses, that a lot of people now are starting to grasp there's a story to be told, so a history lesson can be learned. And we're just waiting for who's going to play certain parts. I think Jennifer Hudson is being targeted for a movie. People are talking about Dorothy Dandridge. There's been a lot of people talking about making a movie about Dorothy Dandridge. Aretha Franklin, they're talking about a movie being made about Aretha Franklin.
That movie is made, and also I believe, if not this month, next month, the National Geographic has come out with a 4-part series on Aretha. So additionally with that, Jennifer Hudson is playing her. That movie is made. It's just the release date haven't been. But I think that's wonderful. I mean, I am in me just being a person that love rich history. I've been educated. I mean, I've been inspired by it. And even when I talk to my daughters, like I was telling them the story of Sam Cooke, and what really happened. His nephew wrote a book, My Uncle Sam, and that book is very informative on what really happened. Like, it's a lot of informative things in there that the public didn't know about. And unfortunately, when Sam Cooke died, his estate is owned by somebody else, so the family somehow was not able to get back his assets. And so, I mean, it's things like that. And I can see how, like when I'm watching something, and now my daughters do it to me, I'm like, you need to watch this. This is something you need to know. And it helps. It's like, wow, I didn't know that. And it's not always have to be negative. There's some very inspiring stories out here that need to be put in film. You know, I think that would definitely be another way to bridge the gap. And of course, along with allowing people, our young people, to express themselves, like they got out and they, protested for the rights, that the things that happened around the George Floyd murder. And so I think young folk are hungry for those things, but it's just really haven't been brought to them in a way that they can use it to be inspired.
Well, I think, since you brought up that with George Floyd, the gentleman that kept his knee on his neck, the trial is getting ready to start for that gentleman. And there's a lot of concern, nationwide about what the outcome is going to be, as well as what the public and their reaction to what the outcome, may be.
Well, and I have some concerns myself, because we've seen over and over how justice is not. I mean, we watch how it get played out, and those people do not receive the proper justice, due process that they deserve, and it fuels people. I mean, I'm still not able to ever watch that again. What happened to George Floyd?
Well, the thing that, and I know that you and I would, both be, wanting to tell the public is that regardless of what the outcome of that trial is going to be, that we can still verbalize our reaction and how we feel as a result of it. Mm-hmm. But we need to do it in a sensible and in a peaceful way.
Absolutely.
So that no one gets hurt. Mm-hmm. And see, that's the critical part right there. That,
absolutely.
There's a lot of people that are feeling like black people have a lot to really say, and there's ways of how to express our feelings, our emotions. Mm-hmm. We don't want things to reoccur again, but at the same time too, we want to make certain that we do voice our opinions and get our voices heard. And the same thing now, even when it comes down to making certain that we put people into office that are the ones that will be making those decisions, people that will be in those elected positions like judges, magistrates, so that when they're trying these cases, you want to make certain that you do go to the polls and you do vote these individuals in. And at the same time too, the individuals that make the laws that we have to follow, that introduce bills to make certain that we don't have things like the chokeholds, or you put your knee on the back of somebody's neck when you have them down. So there's a lot of things that I'm glad to see some of these legislators are taking the gauntlet and saying, hey, we're not going to keep letting these things happen like that.
Over and over.
But who, just real quick before we wrap up, who were some of your heroes when you were growing up?
Some of my heroes was absolutely first my mother. My mother was probably the coolest cat growing up.
And see, that's another thing too. When we say the terminology, the coolest cat, and we know that's not a feline cat, but the terminology is so different then compared to now. Now, if you were describing your mother in the way that young people would say, how would you describe your mother using the terminology that young people would have, since we're talking about bridging the gap? What would let's say one of your grandchildren that would describe your mother or talk about your mother, what would they say?
Don't tell my age now, Darwin. No,
Well, we're just saying we're not saying anything other than
I'm
just
kidding.
grandchildren.
I think my grandkids probably would describe her as being, let's see, thinking of my daughter, the Kool-Aid mom, I guess, grandma, I guess.
Kool-Aid mom.
Yeah, like her house was the Kool-Aid house.
Oh,
It's
so
like
it was
you
the
could-
place
just a
where you
place
could
of
go
gathering.
get Kool-Aid and gather.
And just be yourself. So she
Okay.
was I think they would say that she was down to earth.
Okay.
She kept it real. You could easily go to her and talk to her. She was one of them kind of grandmothers and mothers. So, yeah, that's how they would describe her.
Well, that's one of the things, because I think that's the real critical key right now, is to make sure that the communication lines are open between young people and their elders, to make certain that people can come and talk and feel free and comfortable talking to whatever the age difference is between two people, but find a way to bridge that gap so that if somebody's going through something in their teens, they can talk to somebody who's in their 50s or 60s, and vice versa. And it seems, like that's one of the critical things that needs to be done. So education, bridging the gap when it comes to communication, and being able to listen. That's one of the critical things, because a lot of times you hear young people saying that the older people don't want to listen to what younger people are saying. But young people have some great ideas. They have great, knowledge about things that are going on. They're very intuitive. So those are things that are really, really important when you talk about bridging that gap. Carol Lee, we're going to have you back on again. This was a fun conversation. We're going to have you back. We can talk a little bit more about this again. But you've been watching Expose Under the Sun, sponsored by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. If you'd like to advertise in the Detroit Native Sun newspaper, you can pick up a copy at the Detroit Native Sun of the Detroit Native Sun newspaper at your local Kroger supermarket. To advertise, you can contact Ms. Valerie Lockhart at area code 313-457-5944. And again, I just want to say to everyone, have a great, safe, peaceful remainder of this week. Peace.